Welcome to TechNova Podcast.
Right. So today we are diving deep into something that probably hit a little too close to home for a lot of you out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The great Microsoft 365 outage.
Yep.
Remember that Saturday when suddenly you couldn't access your inbox?
Right.
It was like a digital ghost town.
Yeah.
Not exactly how anyone wants to spend their weekend, trying to catch up on emails or just relax.
Right.
And what made it even more strange was that at first nobody seemed to know what was going on.
It's true.
Yeah, it was a total mystery.
A total mystery. Like, where did it go?
Yeah.
We rely so much on these platforms, and then when they vanish, it's like, oh, right. Yeah. We depend on this.
Yeah, we take it for granted until it's gone.
Exactly.
And just to give you an idea of how widespread this thing was,
Okay.
Down Detector recorded a massive spike around 4 p.m. Eastern time.
Wow.
So that's a lot of people suddenly in the dark. And, Microsoft's initial response on X, formerly Twitter, was basically just, hey, we see you, we're looking into it.
Yeah.
But, that's not exactly reassuring when you're just staring at a blank inbox,
No, it's like a helpless feeling.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, exactly.
It really is unnerving when these things go down and there's that initial period where no one knows what happened. It's
Right.
unsettling. But in this case, what's interesting is they did eventually figure out it was a code change.
Oh, they did.
And to get everything back online, they had to revert the code.
Revert the code.
Yeah.
Now, for those of us who don't speak code,
Sure.
what does that actually mean?
Okay, so think of it like this. You're building a house, right?
Okay.
And you decide to add on a new room.
Okay.
But then you realize adding that room totally messed up the plumbing in the rest of the house.
Oh, no.
So reverting the code is basically like taking down that new room
Oh, okay.
to fix the plumbing. You're going back to a version that worked before the problem started.
Gotcha. So it's like hitting the undo button on a massive scale.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. But it does make you wonder, how can a single code change bring down a system as huge as Microsoft 365?
Right. It's a good question.
It's wild.
And it shows how incredibly complex these systems actually are.
Right.
Like even the smallest change can have a huge ripple effect,
Yeah.
especially when you're talking about a platform used by billions of people. It's like a giant spider web. You tug on one thread and the whole thing can shake.
It's interconnected, yeah.
Yeah.
And it seems like these outages are becoming more and more frequent.
I think so.
Like, remember the Slack outage earlier this week? It's like a constant reminder that our digital world is pretty fragile.
Right. And it's more than just an inconvenience for individuals. Think about the potential disruptions to businesses' communication, even critical infrastructure. It raises some serious questions about the resilience of our digital systems.
It's true. It's like we're building these super sophisticated interconnected systems, but haven't quite figured out how to make them truly robust.
Ah.
Almost makes you want to print out all your important documents,
Just in case.
just in case.
Yeah.
Old school.
Yeah. There's definitely a conversation to be had about how we can build a more resilient digital infrastructure. It's not just about avoiding these outages altogether, but also about minimizing the impact when they do happen.
Okay, so how about we dig into that? What can we do to make our digital lives more resilient?
Well, let's see. Well, it's definitely a complex challenge. One thing we need to think about is redundancy.
Redundancy, okay.
Yeah. So right now, a lot of businesses, even individuals, rely way too much on just one platform for all their digital needs.
Right.
If that platform goes down, everything grinds to a halt.
So it's like putting all your eggs in one digital basket.
Exactly. A more resilient approach would be to diversify those digital assets, spread them across different platforms or services.
Okay.
That way, if one goes down, you have backups in place.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like having a spare tire in your car.
Right.
You might not need it often, but when you do, you're really glad you have it. Exactly.
But what about those critical systems we talked about earlier? Can you even have a backup for something like a hospital's electronic health record system?
That's where things get even trickier for critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's not just about having a backup. It's about making sure that backup system is just as strong and can take over seamlessly if there's an outage.
Right.
So that might mean investing in things like really sophisticated failover mechanisms, redundant data centers, even decentralized architectures.
Decentralized architectures. Okay, that sounds pretty techy. Can you break that down for us non-coders?
Sure. So imagine a traditional system where all the data is stored in one central location.
Okay.
If something happens to that location, like a power outage or a natural disaster, the whole system crashes.
Yeah.
A decentralized system, on the other hand, spreads the data and processing power across multiple locations.
Okay.
So even if one part of the system fails, the other parts can keep running.
Ah, so it's like having multiple engines on an airplane.
If one fails, the others can keep the plane in the air. That's a pretty good argument for decentralization, but I imagine there are challenges with that approach, too.
Oh, absolutely. Decentralized systems can be more complex to manage and secure. You need to make sure the data is synchronized across all the different nodes, and you need to protect against vulnerabilities in each location. It's a trade-off between resilience and complexity.
So it sounds like there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
It really depends on the specific needs and risks of each system.
Exactly. And it's not just about the technology either. We need to think about the human element. How do we educate users about the potential risks of relying too much on digital systems? How do we train them to respond effectively when these outages do happen?
It's almost like we need a digital preparedness plan, just like we have for natural disasters.
Exactly. We need to be prepared for the digital equivalent of earthquakes and hurricanes. So that could mean having offline backups of important data, knowing how to communicate without relying on digital platforms, and even having alternative ways to access essential services.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the bigger picture. What is this whole situation with the Microsoft outage? Tell us about the future of our relationship with technology.
I think it highlights this growing tension. On one hand, we're becoming more and more reliant on these digital platforms for everything: communication, commerce, healthcare, you name it. They've brought incredible convenience and efficiency to our lives.
Right.
But on the other hand, these outages show us just how vulnerable we are to that dependence.
So it's like a double-edged sword.
Exactly. We benefit from the power and convenience of these technologies, but we also become more susceptible to disruptions when they fail.
Right. And it raises some important ethical and societal questions, too.
Absolutely.
For example, as we delegate more and more tasks to algorithms and automated systems,
Yeah.
how do we make sure there's transparency and accountability when things go wrong? How do we prevent these outages from making existing inequalities even worse?
Those are really important questions. It seems like we're navigating uncharted territory here.
Yeah, we are. And it's going to take a lot of thoughtful discussion and collaboration to find the right balance between using the power of technology and mitigating its potential downsides. So what can we as individuals do to make our digital lives more resilient? Do we all need to become cybersecurity experts?
That's a great question. And thankfully, you don't need to be a tech wizard to take some proactive steps. One simple but powerful thing is to. One simple but powerful thing is to diversify your digital toolkit. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. If you rely solely on one email provider, what happens when that provider goes down?
Yeah, I learned that lesson the hard way during this Microsoft outage. I felt totally stranded.
Ah.
So what are some practical steps people can take to diversify?
Well, for starters, consider using multiple email providers. You could have a primary account for your everyday communication and a secondary one for backups or important correspondence.
That's a great idea.
Uh-huh.
I hadn't thought about having a separate email for backups. What about things like cloud storage?
Hmm.
I mean, most people rely on just one service for all their photos, documents, and everything else.
Right, and that's a potential vulnerability. Think about spreading your digital assets across multiple cloud storage providers. You could use one for personal files, another for work documents, and maybe even a local backup on an external hard drive for extra security.
So it's all about having a backup plan, even in the digital realm. But let's face it, most people don't really think about these things until it's too late. It's kind of like insurance. You hope you never need it, but you're grateful you have it when disaster strikes.
That's a great analogy. And just like insurance, digital resilience requires a bit of proactive planning. It's about anticipating potential risks and taking steps to mitigate them.
Okay, so he's talked about diversification and backups. What other practical tips can you share for boosting our digital resilience?
Well, one crucial thing is to practice good digital hygiene. This means keeping your software up to date, using strong and unique passwords for all your accounts, and being cautious about clicking on suspicious links or downloading attachments from unknown sources. These might seem like small things, but they can go a long way in protecting you from cyber attacks and data breaches.
It's like washing your hands in the digital world, a simple habit that can prevent a lot of problems. But what if you're already super careful and something still goes wrong? I mean, these systems are so complex, it feels like there's always the potential for something to slip through the cracks.
You're right. Even the most sophisticated systems are not foolproof. And that's why it's also important to stay informed about potential threats. Follow reputable sources for news and updates on cybersecurity, and take the time to learn about common scams and phishing techniques. The more you know, the better equipped you'll be to spot and avoid those threats.
So knowledge is power, even in the digital age. It's not about becoming a cybersecurity expert overnight, but about being aware of the risks and taking sensible precautions.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to go it alone. There are tons of resources available to help you navigate the ever-evolving landscape of digital security. Don't hesitate to reach out to tech support services, online communities, or even friends and family who might have more expertise in this area.
That's a great point. Sometimes just asking for help can be the most resilient thing you can do.
Well, this has been an incredibly eye-opening deep dive. Thanks for guiding us through these complex and often overlooked issues.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah.
And remember, the digital world is constantly evolving, so it's crucial to stay curious, stay informed, and stay adaptable.
So as we wrap up, here's a thought-provoking question for you, our listeners.
Hmm.
Imagine a scenario where all digital communications suddenly went dark. No internet, no cell phones, no email. How would you connect with your loved ones, access essential information, or simply navigate your daily life? Take a moment to reflect on that scenario and what it reveals about your own digital dependence and resilience. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.